Hey everyone, welcome. It's Colleen with Portugal The Place. We're so excited to be here tonight. The bells are tolling right now. It is top of the hour, 6 p.m. here in Portugal. And we're really excited to be here and saying hello. It's great to see familiar names. Hey Terry, great to see you from Minnesota. I see Judith is here from Virginia. We've got Patricia from Colorado. We've got people all over. Hey Michael, hello. Teresa, Fiona's going really fast through these names. So I'm trying to keep up as fast as I can. Hey, Cindy, great to see you. We're going to just take questions tonight. So the way our Q&A works, if you haven't been here before, is we really want to have a real conversation. So you can put the questions in the chat and we'll pop them up and dig into them and really see how we can get those answers for you. There's a lot of things going on right now, so many different moving parts that people are thinking about when considering moving to Portugal that really just ask away. So no matter where you are in the process, whether if you're just considering Portugal and it's early on in your mind, or if you're already working with us and in another phase, maybe preparing for your IMA appointment, happy to jump in and answer those questions. So again, I'm Colleen with Portugal The Place. I'm really happy to be here with all of you tonight, and we will dig into those questions. The first thing that I really wanted to say as well is if you have been trying to email us and you've had any bounce back or non-response, there has been a filter that has kind of gone into place that has caused some people with Yahoo emails not to get our messages. So if you happen to be a person with a Yahoo email and you haven't heard from us, go into our contact form and let us know another form of communication, like a phone number, WhatsApp, something like that, because Yahoo is being a little tricky right now. So if you haven't heard from us and you have a Yahoo email, give us another contact and we'll reach out right away. So we're going to dig into the first questions here. So let's see. So hey, Terry, is there an indication one way or the other if the president may or may not sign the new residency legislation? Wow, I tell you, if I had a crystal ball and could answer this question confidently, I would be all over the news right now because this is the question of the hour. For Clyde and I, we're definitely waiting to see how this happens because we're at our 5-year mark, and this is really going to personally affect what our next choice is. But so far, we haven't heard anything. They're both sides of the aisle are saying that it could go either way. There is some constitutionality questions going on, so it is a wait and see. I really don't have any indication, but I'm hopeful that there will be some different considerations for different groups depending on where they are in the process. Hey, Cindy, in order to secure a Portuguese driver's license, is there anything we need to obtain in the US before leaving the US from the DMV? So not really, because what happens is you're going to have the time period till you get your IMA appointment to be able to apply for the driver's license. You'll have to have that residency before you can apply. And your reports are going to expire. They have a 6-month expiration. So you'll need to do everything here. The only thing that I would suggest is if your driver's license in the US is getting ready to expire, if it's close, renew it in the United States. Make sure that you have a good long arc on the expiration time on your American driver's license. And if you happen to have anything outstanding, like a ticket or parking tickets or anything that could affect like an expired registration, clear all that up before you leave. But as far as having documents prepared, you'll have to pull them from here so that they're valid within the time frame of applying for the Portuguese license. All right, is there an IMA checklist available? So we have a knowledge base with the article on all the things you need for your IMA appointment right now. We're happy to share that link out in your group, Cindy, so that you can go through that. We aren't publishing it at the moment to the public because it keeps changing. So we're updating it and sharing it as people are requesting it, but what they're asking for right now could be different in 4 months. All right, so we are going to continue to answer questions as we move forward. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the group. Don't be shy. One of the big questions and one of the things I want to answer right now is we've had a kind of a strange thing happening. We've had the last 4 or 5 guests as they've been moving to Portugal. They've decided to ship their goods through the mail to Portugal. And we've had some real issues with getting them out of customs, and it's cost a lot. So I really want to remind you that until you have your VFS appointment and your visa approved, you can't send anything to Portugal to yourself, even though you may have an address, because you have to have proof that you have the authority to move to Portugal. If you don't, these items that you would ship to yourself will end up in customs, and then those items will be charged a tax, and they can be significant. So some folks have been shipping like clothing and things thinking that would be less expensive, and then they end up having to pay a substantial tax or duty on those items. So there's a couple ways to handle it. One, have it stored and then do like you pack, we ship and send it after you have your paperwork. Or you can buy luggage or like those large IKEA bags and do a whole bunch of bags when you fly over and bring it with you to avoid that kind of accidental tax. All right. So another possible resource for Cindy's question might be the Facebook group American and Friends PT. Yes, that's absolutely true, Terry. They are also doing the same thing. We're all updating those IMA requirements as they're coming through because there are so many kind of moving parts, but they do have great files, and I love American and Friends for their details. And Cindy, we can get those right out to you as well. All right. So moving a pet and documents. So if it's a pet, a domestic pet that is like cats, dogs, things like that, small animals, you can move them. You're going to need the veterinarian certification from your vet that is filed internationally. So it's going to show that your pet has the microchip that is required. And it's going to show that it has a current rabies certification within 10 days of your traveling. So you have to time getting the certification very carefully to make sure everything is documented within 10 days of your intended travel date. Then when you move the pet, it depends on if you use a pet relocation company. They are more expensive, but they handle everything for you, all the paperwork, all the transport, and the vet visit on the other side. If you choose to do it on your own, you have to have those deadlines. You have to have that time to make sure that you've gone to your vet, they've had the vet check, they've been cleared with their health, they have their up-to-date vaccinations and rabies, they've been microchipped, and then that paperwork is filed electronically to show that they have everything correct. Then you have to show that proof when you bring your dog or cat or animal to fly. You'll need to make those plane reservations in advance, and you need to be very aware that there are restrictions on temperature. So if you're flying out of a place that has temperature extremes, either too cold or too high, like over 82 degrees or below freezing, they may not take that animal because they don't want the animal to be sitting out in these extreme temperatures. So you really want to be careful if you're flying from hot areas that you're timing that and thinking about that. And then once you arrive in Portugal, you will have a vet visit at the airport. You will need to go through another form to fill out. The vet will then verify that you had everything. And then after you get into your new place, you go to any vet. You can go to any vet in Portugal and have them transfer their microchip to the new address, and then have your pet passport, which will be good for your animal to be able to travel across the EU. So that'll be your last step. Hi, April. All right. We will be applying for a D8 visa. My husband is the primary applicant. After we are approved, move to Portugal and make our IMA residency appointment. How many times can my husband travel to and from the USA while we await our residency appointment? I'm hearing there is a long wait and visas are expiring before the appointments. Can he travel? If you have a longer wait than the approved amount of time on this, which is 120 days from the time it's approved to you have 120 days to move to Portugal. In that period of time, you have 2 entries into Portugal. You will use one when you move, and you will have another one where you could come and go. Once that has expired, you will be in limbo. You will not be able to travel until you have your residency card. So it's very important to be prepared for that. And I have a lot of people ask, well, what if there's an emergency? What if there's a death in the family? What if there's something I really have to do? You can apply for an exception. You can put in paperwork to the consulate saying you need to have an exception, but it requires documentation, verification, and it doesn't always get approved. So with these long arcs for the IMA appointment that are longer than that 120 days, you need to be prepared to stay in Portugal. Okay, so Joshua is asking, with new legislation hanging in the balance, would it be easier to start the visa process here in the US? From my understanding, appointments over in Portugal are hit and miss. So Joshua, you have to start your appointment from your home country. The appointments that we're talking about, the IMA appointment, is your second appointment, but everybody has to start in their home country. So if you're an American, you have to go to the consulate that is attached to your geography. So there are different consulates across the country, depending on where you live, and you will apply for your visa there. And that will be a temporary travel visa that they will then grant to you with the anticipation that you will have an appointment in Portugal when you get here after you've had that first step. So absolutely must do it from the United States. And then you'll have a second appointment that you'll need to go to. That's the IMA appointment in Portugal. So Judith is asking, is there a ballpark for how much a couple would typically spend per month? Would you say that cost of living is more, less, or equal to here in the States? I know there are many variables with this. So Judith, that is a loaded question because without knowing like which area in Portugal you plan to live, what some of your expected expenses are, like if you intend to have a car or not to have a car, things like that, there are a lot of substantial variables in that. But depending on where you live in the US is also a big factor. So for folks coming from the East and the West Coast, so if you're in the major metropolitan areas of California, Seattle, if you're up in New York and Boston and places like Washington, D.C., people find, and this is a big generality, so I'm being very careful here, that the cost of living in Portugal is significantly less. But if you're from the middle of the country in the United States or from the South, you may find that you're not seeing as much of a savings because the electricity costs, the transportation costs like fuel are lower in that part of the United States. But there are a couple areas that really impact your budget. One, the healthcare costs here are significantly lower, even with the private health insurance. So that is something to consider. If you go without a car, if you live in an urban area, you will significantly lower your transportation costs, and groceries, dining out, things like that are substantially lower as well. So in general, most people feel that it's lower, but it can really be impacted by where you're coming from in the US. Okay, so Layla is asking, are there moving companies that would allow us to ship our solar generator? It has a lithium iron phosphate battery. That is an interesting question, and it's funny because I just had someone ask me this like last week. So like 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have had an answer for you, but I've actually had this conversation. So this is a challenge. It can be done, but the client that I was working with found that it was so costly with the insurance and the requirements to make sure that it was shipping ready that they found that replacing it here with their system that they were going to install here was actually more cost effective. So we did find a company that was willing to discuss how it would be done, but the inspections, the insurance, the packaging, the shipping, and finding a company that would take the lithium battery was definitely limited. We had like one option and you paid for that. All right. So Marlena, what do we need to do to be able to go fishing in Portugal? Do we need to purchase a fishing license? It's very straightforward. And yes, it's very similar to the US. You purchase a fishing license for the rivers. There are different municipalities where they allow fishing and things. And so you would go and get a day license, you know, that kind of thing in the area that you're planning to fish. Ocean going, you can go out on a charter. You don't need to have any license for that. But if you're fishing on the lakes and the rivers, then you would work within the municipality, and they have day licenses and they do have monthly passes as well. So Patricia is asking, my new apartment in Alcobaça is completely unfurnished, so I'm guessing I will have to wait until I arrive to PT to begin furnishing kitchen appliances, etc. So Patricia, I think I know which apartment you're in, and if you're in the apartment I think you are, you're actually going to be neighbors with my daughter Fiona. So we can actually, if you're working with Portugal The Place, if this is what I'm understanding, then we can assist you in getting all of this set up before you arrive. Finding appliances, if you want to purchase pre-owned appliances, there's a lot of resources on Facebook Marketplace, for example, and we can help coordinate that delivery. Radio Popular and Wharton's, they do deliveries with new appliances, lots of different resources. And if you go to the Portugal The Place website and you go under resources to shopping links, everything that's listed there you can order from in the United States and have delivered here. And that's part of Portugal The Place's services. We can coordinate that, receive the deliveries, and help you at least have a basic setup before you arrive. So Gilbert is asking, I have two small dogs. Will finding a place make it more difficult? You know, it does affect the search for sure. It does remove some potential properties. So when you have dogs, you're going to need to be a little more flexible, perhaps being open-minded to unfurnished, because sometimes people don't want animals on their furnishings, for example, being flexible on the location so that we have more inventory to search for. So it can reduce the number of properties that are available, but it doesn't make it impossible, especially if they're small, like apartment-sized dogs. So Teresa's asking, what is the best way to ship clothing to Portugal? So if you are coming over and moving to Portugal and you want to have clothing with you, I highly recommend you getting those blue bags from IKEA, packing them full of your clothing, your soft goods like your towels, things like that, and then paying the baggage fee at the airport and just take extra bags with you. We pick up people at the airport with like 15 suitcases and a dog and two kids. I mean, it's like the whole thing. That is the most cost effective. You can pack through like You Pack We Ship, but like I was saying earlier, you can't send those things until you have your approval on your visa, you've registered your address in Portugal so that you have authority to ship it without paying customs and duty tax. All right, so can I find studio apartments in Portugal in any area with a budget around 60,000 euros? So this is a really tough one and it's very limited. Right now, the inventory for purchase of a property that's habitable, and that's the key here. There is listings that are tear downs or completely in need of 100% renovation. But if you wanted a habitable property under 60,000, it would be very, very, very rare to find that. Right now, when people are on limited budgets between 100 and 150,000, we're struggling to find them in a habitable state and having any living space at all. And I mean, I'm talking like 30 square meters. So the prices have definitely gone up. There is a very limited inventory for properties that you can live in under 100,000. Okay, so April's asking, in your experience, is it better for individuals and families to rent for or purchase a place for the first year? This is a very individual question. So for some people, they want to immediately invest in the market because it's a growing market. It's definitely shown a lot of appreciation and increase in value over the last years, and they want to immediately have their money working for them. It also provides a substantial amount of inventory that you have compared to rentals, because there are a very limited amount of rentals in Portugal in many of the most popular areas. But the flip side is it's a big investment. If you're not sure you like Portugal, then that could be an impact. And there's other costs that come with homeowning. You know, you'll have other things you'll probably want to do to the property. So it's a personal conversation. You know, it's one of the things I have with folks constantly when they're in their first stages of considering Portugal, is there are pros and cons to both. But if you even think that you're not sure if Portugal's going to be the country that you want to stay in for a couple of years, if you're like testing the water, I would really recommend renting first. But if you've set your mind to it, if you've been to Portugal before, if you have a lifestyle and an area targeted, then right now there's some, you know, opportunities for investment and for growth in value in the properties. All right, so Dion is asking, is it better, easier, cheaper to ship furniture to Portugal as opposed to buying everything new once in country? So there's no shortage of furniture here, and the prices can be very reasonable. We have IKEA here, we have Amazon here, you have a plethora of other resources to buy furniture that are reasonably priced. So it depends on the value of the furniture that you have and if you feel that it will fit into your new lifestyle. A perfect example is bedrooms in Portugal in general are not square, they are long. So a king size bed, like a California king that's very wide and long, oftentimes doesn't fit comfortably in the bedrooms here because we don't see in Portugal as many perfectly square bedrooms. They're more long, and so it makes the bed configurations fit differently. Same with things like furniture, like sofas and couches and things. Many cases, Americans have oversized, really big items, and they just don't fit properly in the proportions of a property in Portugal. So it's an individual consideration. Antiques, if it's something that is very sentimental, absolutely, bring it along. But other things are very easy to replace here, and they fit better because they're designed for the European lifestyle. So April's asking, our oldest child will turn 18 before we apply for our visa. They are a dependent who lives and will live with us. Under the D8 visa, it states they will have to either work or be enrolled in college. Can they be enrolled in any college, online US English, or must it be a college in Portugal? It needs to be a college in Portugal, and I believe it can still have an online component. They are making some changes to that, so I would definitely, April, want to dig into it a little more because last year it was more flexible. Now they're getting more specific, and they haven't written it out yet. It's just we're seeing a change in approvals. So I believe by 2026, we're going to have a clearer understanding of what they're going to allow for dependents. But the realistic understanding is that they want them to be enrolled in Portugal, invested in Portugal. So that would be something to consider. But there are schools, classes, and different kinds of curriculum that teach in English, and immersion Portuguese counts. So if your 18-year-old wants to come over and be enrolled in an immersion Portuguese curriculum where they're learning Portuguese, that's sufficient, and that would count for their school. So Marlena is asking, since there are fewer questions, I'm going to ask this one, even though it's not super important. Will it be difficult to find a hairstylist, one that can make sure I remain a blonde? Well, this didn't happen without help. So it absolutely is possible. There is so many services in Portugal. I love the Portuguese and their aesthetic. There are hair salons, there are beauty services, barbershops, nail salons, everything that you can imagine, even in the smallest towns. So you'll find your vibe. You'll definitely find the one that feels like it's the best fit for you. I happen to have found this fantastic spot up in Leiria with a Brazilian family that is not only really talented at what they do, but it's so much fun. They've got samba music playing. They're always feeding me something they're cooking from some kitchen, and they just have so much joy. So I'll have to say that my experiences here, the people are friendly, they're very engaged, they have lots of fun products, and you really can find the services that you need. So April is asking, will any major appliances from the US work in Portugal? We've recently purchased very nice Samsung washer, dryer, and refrigerators. Can electricians help with this? No. They're built with different motors inside. So even if you were to use a transformer, even if you were to try to plug them in and have them rewired, at the most, they might last 6 months to a year. They just are built differently. The different voltage, the different plugs, bringing over things like that is not worth the money. It'd be better to try to sell them and replace them. What you can bring electronics wise are ones that have universal power and motors inside. So for example, some sewing machines, especially the higher end, have universal. You just switch out the plugs. A lot of your electronics, like computers, your computer electronics have universal. You switch out the plug. But TVs have location pieces inside, and they're designed for the area that they've been sold from. And not only do they not work with the transformers, but there's oftentimes chips embedded inside that don't allow them to connect and work with networks here. But major heavy appliances wouldn't be able to handle the power change. Oh, thank you, Marlena. I love her. She's a lot of fun. And Fiona and I are going on Saturday and doing a girls' day and having some treatments and then lunch. So definitely a lot of great options. And we're on the Silver Coast, so not the largest city. Lisbon, Porto. Oh my gosh, they have so much. So Michael is asking, in order to get a golden visa, is the investment amount still around 300,000? So there's two paths right now for the golden visa. One is 500,000, and that is an investment that returns your money. You have an opportunity to get your money back in 8 years with the possibility of growth. Or you can do a lower entry in at 200,000, but that is a full-on donation. There is no possibility of getting that money back. And that's a donation to qualified charities or foundations in Portugal. A lot of the arts have these where you can support some type of renovation on a historic building or some type of arts and cultural project. So there's two paths in. It's 500,000 for the investment schemes. It can be like green energy. It can be developments for low income housing. There's all kinds of different places you can invest in different golden visas you can go through, or you can go through the donation, but knowing that that 200,000 is not coming back. All right, so under the new foreigner law, what will be the new minimum for annual income for the D8 visa? They haven't changed that at this point. We have no announcement of that changing, but we do see a consistent year over year cost of living increase where they change it slightly. Every year that we've been doing this, there's been a little bit of increase, but nothing significant. And we have not had any income requirement for the D7 or the D8 being changed. The biggest change that they made to visas under the new laws was about the job seeker visa, which they've eliminated unless you're a highly qualified or highly skilled technician. So Tricia is asking, I understand mold can be an issue in homes. How do you remedy or prevent the excess moisture? Are there regions that don't have that issue? Or is it based on the age of the property? That's a great question. So mold can absolutely be an issue. Again, just like anywhere, you know, moisture gets in and it can cause a problem. And there is humidity in Portugal. It's a country that's bordered by the ocean and lots of moisture in the air. But it does have a lot to do with the age of the property, but not always. One of the things people don't always think about is the aspect of the property. So what I mean by that is if it gets a lot of natural light, if it is south facing, if you're getting lots of natural light, you can be in the same apartment building, for example. The south facing properties are warm, dry, very comfortable. And then that apartment on the other side of the building, on the north side, is having issues with moisture because it doesn't get that same direct light. It doesn't get that same warmth from that radiant natural light. So aspect is a really important question and an important consideration when you're looking at a property to help mitigate the mold issues. The other thing is some homes were built too closed up. They actually put new, let's say it's an older home, but they put all brand new double pane windows in, but the older home wasn't designed in a way to have any kind of ventilation. So when they put those brand new windows in and they sealed everything up, it can actually create like a greenhouse effect and create almost more moisture. Maybe warmer, but it gets damper. The new construction has ventilation systems, air bricks, and even VMC systems, which are circulating air through the walls, inside the walls, and allowing the air to ventilate out at the bottom of the foundation. So there's lots of different things to look for, but one of the most practical things to consider before anything else is aspect. How much natural light does it get, and what is the ventilation in the place? So Lisa is asking, I have medical supplies I need to bring for a wheelchair. The motor, I'm thinking, is the question. The question I would ask your medical supplier is if it has a universal power source and if that can have a different adapted plug for it. If it doesn't, if they can tell you if there's a way to adapt that motor for charging or for use here, because it will be about how it's set up to be able to receive the current. So it's really important to ask your medical supply company where you get it, what the power setup is, and if it has a universal motor. Hey, Cindy. So you purchased a 3,000 watt transformer. Will my cappuccino machine, which is under 1,500 watts, be okay if running through the transformer? For a while, but not forever. Most of the time, people bring them. They put the transformers in. You find that they don't work as robustly as they did before, and then they die much faster because they're not getting the same energy the way that they were designed. So it's not a long-term fix, and it's usually kind of disappointing. Most people that try that end up not using it and turning and buying one here because it's set up for the current. KitchenAid is a perfect example. I had a KitchenAid in the US and loved it, used it all the time, sold it. I have a new KitchenAid here. Of course, it's a European KitchenAid, so it has the right motor. I've had folks have brought their KitchenAid from the States, use their transformer, and it died about 5-6 months after using it because it just wasn't able to work on that constant change, the way that the energy is sent to the motor. So Ray is asking, how is public transportation? Do I need to own a car if I'm living in a more rural area or outside of the city center? So if you live outside of the city center of Porto or Lisbon, in particular, you'll still have transportation options such as the buses. There's some expanded train lines depending on where you're living outside of the city center, and you can comfortably live a car-free life. I'll give you an example. Vila Nova de Gaia and over on the south side of the Porto greater area has connectivity with trains. There's lots of buses. You're able to live in those outer areas. Lisbon, if you're living up towards Cascais, in Estoril, and that area, and Sintra, you'll have trains, buses, all of that. Even if you're living in Setúbal, for example, down on the peninsula outside of Lisboa, there is a train that goes back into Lisbon, and there's local buses and things of that nature. But a lot of the rural areas, you can use buses. You can absolutely connect, like Flixbus is a private bus company that runs all over the country very conveniently and very affordably. Ready to Express, there's lots of different options, but in general, most people that live in the rural areas end up getting a car just because depending on a bus schedule all the time and carrying your things and buying things, and if you have a pet, you can't take them, it ends up being more convenient and really just a lot easier to have a car. And a lot of folks live a hybrid lifestyle. In the city that they live in, the smaller town, they walk everywhere. But when they want to go take a day trip, go get something from a larger store, head into the city, it's nice to have that car. So Catherine is asking, do you know if remote work outside Portugal is allowed on the D7, assuming you maintain your passive income requirements without that work income? Absolutely. It doesn't preclude you from being able to work. The D7, the only work you cannot do on the D7 is take a job from the Portuguese. So you can't come in on the D7 and then get hired at a restaurant, for example. They don't want you to come and take a job from a Portuguese person through that passive income visa. But you can have a remote job anywhere. You could have an international remote job. You can have your own business. You can start a business. We moved on the D7, and it's perfectly legal for us to have a business in Portugal. Lots of folks will do things like yoga studios, or perhaps they provide a service of some kind. So the one thing just to keep in mind is they just don't encourage you to go and have a job that perhaps a Portuguese person would be able to fill. All right, and what is the average cost for private health insurance? So that is a big spread because if you are a young person under the age of 30 and you're doing a private health insurance policy, you could probably get something between 30 and 60 a month. If you are a older person, maybe over 60, and you have some health concerns, so you need a insurance that will accept pre-existing conditions, you could be paying 300-ish a month. So there's a wide variety of options and choices. It really depends on your age, your health, and how much coverage you want and what you're looking for. So MGen, for example, is the premier company in Portugal. And they offer insurance without a medical check, and they don't exclude pre-existing conditions. They are the most expensive. But then you can go through other insurance companies that will offer limited policies that may exclude a pre-existing condition, but still cover regular medical checkups and things like that. So depends on your age and your health condition on what your cost will be, but If you're over 75, if you start getting up over 75 or in your 80s, then a lot of people balance the difference between self-pay and just paying for things out of pocket as opposed to premiums per month. Because if you're starting and you've never had insurance in Portugal before and you're, say, 79 years old, you could be seeing easily 600-700 a month as your premium. Hey, Don, hi. Another question regarding proposed changes. If known, under the D7 visa, are income requirements increasing from 1,200 to... No, no, there's no increase like that coming at all. The D7 has zero, they have made no expectations of changing the income for the D7 and the D8. And they are not doing a proof of savings of 50,000 minimum. Absolutely not. So there hasn't been any proposed changes to that. So they will make a cost of living adjustment. I could see it going from the 830, to maybe coming up to about 1,000 a month as the minimum for the D7. I could see the 3,200 going up to maybe 3,400, but that's just the normal cost of living increases. They're not making any significant changes to the D7 or the D8. So Lisa's asking, bus and train can do wheelchair. If yes, that's so cool. Yes, both. They are very equipped, and even the small city buses, the little kind of local free buses that run around the cities that are smaller, shorter buses, they have the wheelchair ramp so people can come on board, and the trains and the large buses are equipped. So absolutely. So Marlena is saying, we will be in Portugal in April and plan to bring 12 bottles of port back with us. I like your style, Marlena. Do you have any recommendations for the best way to ship it or bring it back to Texas? So I did something similar when we came to Portugal the first time and came back maybe with that same-ish amount of port. And I went ahead and bought the port from the distributors up in Porto and had them ship it home for me. They handled all the taxes, they packed it properly, and then it got home much safer than me trying to drag it through the airport and pack it in suitcases. We also have, there's lots of wine stores that sell port and wine from Portugal that will ship on your behalf. And so most of the time, if you want to bring a good amount back like that, I recommend that you work with the shippers. They'll give you a discount if you buy a case, that kind of thing. And then it gets home safely and it'll have insurance on it as well in case it breaks. Is traffic way more crazy than the USA? No, it's okay. So this one, I love this question, Lisa, because absolutely, it kind of makes me laugh. I lived in LA for 17 years, and then I moved from Portland, Oregon, right before we lived in Portugal. And so I've lived where there's traffic, and Lisbon has traffic for sure. Porto has traffic for sure. But the worst traffic I've ever been in Lisbon, and I mean the worst, rush hour, 5 o'clock, is still moving. Like you're not in a parking lot. You're not like sitting and not going anywhere forever for no reason. I mean, it still moves. It is such a short window when those kind of crazy parts of the day are in the morning and the evening compared to the cities in the States. Now, if you're from a quieter town that doesn't have the traffic issues, Lisbon and Porto will feel really frenetic. And if you get off the main highways and motorways and you drop into the centers, then yes, it feels a lot more crazy because the streets are really narrow and there's a lot of like rules about one way and where you can go. But in general, once you get the hang of it, you'll find that the motorways here are wide open and easy to drive. There's lots of open roads. They're really well maintained, and it's fun to drive in Portugal. It's not, I don't miss California at all. It's so much easier. So Mexico was so chaotic with oh yeah, it's not like that at all. It's not like Italy, not like France where they just run into you on purpose. Here it's still a big city. I mean, Lisbon's still a capital city, but it's nothing like Italy where the mopeds are flying by, nothing like that. So you're doing the D7, but I've cut hair all my life. I'm disabled. Should I let my license lapse? It would be honored there, or I was doing one haircut a month. You'd have to get a new license here. They require you to take a test and have a license, cosmetology license in Portugal. So letting your license lapse in the States, if you intend to stay here in Portugal, I don't think it would affect you, because if you wanted to legally cut hair here in Portugal and establish a business under that heading, then you would need to have a cosmetology license here. But there are folks that serve the American clientele that kind of have an in-home service where they manage without the license. So Ray's saying, how easy is it to open a bank account? Well, it's one of the things we put into our packages here at Portugal The Place because it's not that easy doing it remote, and it is required for your visa application. So there's really just one bank right now, Novo Banco, that is doing online accounts, and there's definitely a process of review and going to compliance, and it can be really frustrating. So it's not the easiest thing to do. You have to have your NIF, your tax identification number, before you can apply. They're going to verify your identity. There's a fair amount of money laundering documents that you have to fill out. In general, it's a process to try to get a bank to approve you remotely. If you're here in Portugal and you can walk in, you come on a trip or something, that can be slightly easier. But it's one of the reasons we do it remotely for people, because it's a lot of little moving parts that you have to deal with. So April is saying her father will be applying under our D8 visa as a dependent. Can he eventually live in his own apartment while in Portugal, or must he be living with you? To qualify legally for the visa, you will have to have proof that he is your dependent. You're going to have documentation showing that through a variety of that he lives with you currently, that you have care documents showing that you're getting reimbursed for caring for him. We did this with my father. He was in his 80s when he moved with us, and we had to have documentation showing that he had been living with us for the past 5 years, that he was dependent on our support to be able to meet his daily needs. We had to provide all that documentation, and then yes, he had to live at the address that we were using. So it is verified, because he could live somewhere else in the 2 years, but then when it comes up for renewal, he would have, if he was going to still be as a dependent, he would have to be showing that he was living with you. So at what point can you get insurance here? So you can buy private insurance in Portugal as soon as you have a legally registered address. So you don't have to be in the visa process. A lot of people will buy a home here in Portugal for vacation or for future moving, but they want to have the option to have private insurance when they come here, because they're spending maybe 3 months of the year here, and they can then purchase the insurance. Residency card visa is not required to get insurance, but a legal residency is required. All right, so we're moving through a lot of questions here. So I know that, let's see, we have a question here about, can you speak a little about your experience building a social network? My wife and I are in our 30s, and we're worried about meeting people where language won't be a barrier, thinking about a large urban area for this reason. That's a really great consideration, and that's one of the things we talk to people at length about, because I think that the folks that are successful living here in Portugal are the ones that found people to communicate with, to bond with, to have a shared experience, and to not feel isolated. A lot of folks will get a hold of me and say, we want to move to Portugal, and we found this great house out here in the middle of somewhere in the mountains, and the house is great, the price is great, but the isolation is always a concern. And especially when you're at a point in your life where you're working hard, and maybe you're not out all the time because you're working remote or whatever. So you're already kind of isolated because you're by yourself as you're working. So I would really recommend considering the area and what your lifestyle is like. Now, that being said, all the different urban areas have a thriving community of people of all ages from all over the world. And one of my favorite things about building community here is the fact that it's not just other Americans that I get to be friends with, but I have friends from all walks of life and all parts of the world. I'd never imagined I'd have friends from Brazil and from Angola and from Belgium and Australia and Malaysia, and all these different interesting backgrounds, because Portugal really is a place where people come to have a new experience, and it's a land of immigrants. And so you'll find so many people here. So for folks that are at your age and in your point in life, I'd really encourage the urban areas for sure. But a lot of people connect through what you love to do. If you like to hike or walk or do an activity, you can find people right away that you can connect with. Lisa, I am learning Portuguese. I am taking my Portuguese classes. I intend to take the CIPL exam, which is the exam you have to have for the permanent residency and or the citizenship. There are 2 ways to get your language under your belt in your portal to show that you are doing what you're supposed to do. It's taking a class where you are in an intensive immersion class, and that'll give you a certification at the end where you don't have to take an exam. Or like me, where my schedule doesn't allow me to block off, 9 weeks straight, 5 days a week. So I'm taking tutoring and working on my Portuguese with the intention of taking the exam. So I am learning, and I don't know if there'll ever be a point when I'm not saying that I'm still learning, because it's a very long process to pick up a new language like Portuguese. All right, so Terry was saying, I like to do my research ahead of time. Still plan to have PTB do most of the groundwork. With my 2 scouting trips, I really like Caldas de Reina and Aveiro. Any other places I can investigate? Terry, we're happy to go through all of that and walk you through it. I mean, there's so many different places. Ovar and Aveiro, north of Aveiro, so Ovar and Espinho and that area just south of Vila Nova de Gaia has a great community and great quality of life. Up in the north, going east between Porto and Braga, there's a beautiful community of Santo Tirso and Vila Nova de Famalicão, which are close to Guimarães. That whole area is vibrant and has a great community. And then when you're looking in the far north, Viana do Castelo is an amazing community. It's beautiful, and it has so many different ways and things to do up there in the north. And you are just as close to Vigo, Spain, as you are to Porto. So it gives you this really interesting international experience. There are fantastic communities all across Portugal. If you haven't checked out Leiria, the city of Leiria is vibrant. It's alive. It has amazing cultural events, a big thriving community, food, international food from all over. It's a fantastic city, and it's not a touristy city. So it's very local. You really get immersed in the Portuguese culture there. So lots of options and lots of places that you can consider. It's really endless. So Deanna is saying, so can you come to Portugal on a trip and open a bank account without a formal in-country address? It's difficult. You have to have your NIF, so you'll have to have that very first piece. And if you don't have an address, many times the banks will decline. We are able to get some bank accounts opened without having that address because we have a personal relationship with one of the branches at Novo Banco. So they will let us set it up, and then when people get here, you can go in and sign. But it really does have to be dependent on the branch, who you know, if you can get an exception, because most of the time, if you just kind of drop in, they'll say you need to have a Portuguese address. So Lisa, is it super hard? You know Spanish? I know a little, maybe it'll help. I actually knew too much Spanish because it really confuses you. The pronunciation of Portuguese and Spanish are so different, but the words can be similar. So it does kind of mess with your head a little bit. So yes, it helps from a reading perspective, but from the pronunciation side, Portuguese is not phonetic. There's no part of Portuguese that you can really guess how to pronounce the word. And that's one of the trickiest parts for those of us that are learning the language, is you look at it and you're like, oh, it should be this. And it's usually totally opposite. So a little tricky, the pronunciation. Oh, there are cooking groups all over. You can take cooking classes. We have a cooking group here in Alcobaça that's fantastic. There's cooking groups up in Porto. I went to a fantastic cooking group and did an event all the way up in the very far north where it was all about sustainability and all of the using like the like the variable products that grow on the earth and what the animals eat and everything. Lots and lots of fantastic cooking opportunities. If that's your thing, you're going to love being here in Portugal. It really unfolds in front of you. So Lisa, I understand a lot of Americans, it's funny, we actually laugh about the fact that we have a more robust social life and more people that we know and that we've connected with here in Portugal than we ever had the opportunity to connect with in the States. There's something about the outside living in Portugal. Here in Portugal, you go out, you don't need a big house. You don't entertain the same way. You don't have to try to have everyone come over to your place, because most people, whether it's to catch up for a coffee or to watch the football game or have a nice meal or go to a festival, Portugal is an outside country. People are out and together, and all the generations are intermixing. And you're sitting at the cafe watching people, and you can see grandmas playing with the little kids, and people just talking and greeting each other like they haven't seen each other in years, and they probably saw each other yesterday. So it's a very outside place. You're out of your home, and it naturally makes you want to connect. And then the Americans and the folks that have come over, most of us are having a similar experience. So it automatically gives you a way to bond with someone. You know, what's your origin story in Portugal? And as soon as you have that conversation, we all have funny stories and things we did, and it connects you in a way that is different than when you're in the United States. So April is saying, my father is currently not living with us and wants to live on his own. Sounds like he should try to apply for a D7 visa. He's on Social Security and disability. What's the minimum monthly income and savings he will need in 2026? We haven't had the new number for 2026, but I anticipate it'll be about 900 to 1,000 euros per month. And then you need 1 year's worth of that in the bank for him. So you want to put a little bit more in the bank, because if he's living on his own, he'll have rent and utilities that he'll need to cover. So we recommend getting somewhere between 15 to 20,000 in that bank account, and then having that verifiable income, which Social Security and disability is absolutely verifiable passive income that shows that he meets that minimum requirement. And then for your 18-year-old child applying under your D8 visa, will they eventually have to apply for their own visa? How long can they stay under our visa if enrolled in school or working a job in Portugal? Does their residency start with our residency, though they can apply citizenship in the future? Yes-ish. So it depends on the way that they come in. So yes, they would have their residency. If they could keep their residency legal, then absolutely they would be on the same track for citizenship as we know it today. I don't have the answer on what it's going to be like in the future, because there's quite possible that they make some changes to that. And that's one of the things we're waiting to learn about. But they can go up to the age of 21. And there's some extensions that are allowed if they go into graduate programs and they're still in school. But after 21, there's an expectation that they're going to either be working or doing something, and they'll apply for their own visa. So I know that we're getting to the top of the hour here, and we've had a lot of great questions. One of the things that I see kind of over and over again is that concern about the visa and the income and what you need to be able to qualify for the D7 and the D8. There has been a lot of conversations about the citizenship laws and immigration in Portugal, but Portugal is not targeting the D7 passive incomes and the D8 digital nomad visas. That hasn't been part of the conversation. The only part of the conversation that we're seeing is really around that job seekers visa, which they've changed, family reunification, which they've modified and brought back to being more straightforward, and then considering the length of time before you can apply for citizenship. The other thing that has not happened, and I want to make this really clear, is even if they extend the citizenship to 10 years, they have not done anything to change the permanent residency. So for example, if they do in fact pass the law that says that it'll go to 10 years instead of 5 years for citizenship, Clyde and I will just pivot to permanent residency. And the one thing that you will do there that's different is we won't have the right to vote. We won't have an EU passport. So that's what we won't have. But what we will have is the security of living in Portugal legally for 10 years and not having to renew visas and going to IMA appointments. We'll have all the rights and benefits outside of being able to vote. So it's really important. It doesn't mean they're trying to get people out of Portugal. It doesn't mean they're trying to get rid of immigrants. None of that. What they're trying to do is reduce the selling a passport. They really want people to be invested in Portugal and to be wanting to live in Portugal and not just use it as a bouncing off to get an EU passport and then go move to other European countries. So it's a gray area. I know it feels like maybe they're trying to make it more difficult, but what they really want is people that want to live in Portugal itself, that wants to be part of the solution of helping this country thrive and continue to grow. So for us, it doesn't change a single thing about what we want to do in Portugal. We're so excited about this country that we call home, and we intend to be permanent residents and then hope to be citizens as soon as we're allowed to be. So for sure. So Lisa, it was 5, and right now we don't know if they're going to extend it to 10. There was a conversation about 7 for people that are from Portuguese speaking countries only. So the 7 conversation was for countries like Brazil, Angola, Mozambique, Cape Verde. They would get a different extended period of time for the citizenship. But for those of us that are English speaking or from other countries outside of those, they're looking at moving it from 5 years to 10 years. And how hard is it to get a visa to come to Portugal to study Portuguese for like 6 months to a year? It would be a year. Your student visa, that would be under the student visa, and it is possible. You have to pay and be enrolled in school. There's a different set of qualifications. Happy to walk you through that separately, but it's not difficult as long as you're enrolled in a licensed university or school here in Portugal that you can verify that you've paid and that you're prepared. You can do it year by year. You just keep enrolling as many years as you need to be in school. All right, so last question is coming up here. Thank you everyone for all the great questions. I'm stumbling over my words because I've just been going and going here. So Judith is asking, do you feel safer as a woman there? My husband is quasi-military and is underway for 3 months at a time. So that is a great question, and that is absolutely the number one reason we love living here in Portugal. I absolutely feel safe as a woman here. I also feel safe with my family here. We moved here in part because we have our lovely daughter Fiona, who was a teenager when we moved here, and I couldn't stand the anxiety level that we would have if she just went out to go out with friends, in the city, things like that. There's so much violence and danger for a woman, for a young person in the United States. And for us, we just didn't want that life for her. And now she's 24, she's here in Portugal, and I still worry. You're a mom, right? But the difference is she goes into Lisbon, she goes out, hangs out with friends. And I give it a passing thought, and I hope she's making good choices. She's right here, so she's laughing. I hope she's making good choices, but I'm not worried about her getting shot or pulled over or something really significant like that happening to her. And I can walk through the streets at night after an event and not have the keys clutched in my hand. I can go out late in the evening into my car and not feel like I have to look in the back of the car. And of course, you have to be smart. There's pickpockets, there's things that can happen in any city. But in general, and compared to the level of anxiety women have in the States, it's nothing like that. And you really don't know what you've been carrying until it's gone. And after about a year of living in Portugal, you're like, wow, that was a level of anxiety that I can't believe I lived under. And it gives you brain space to do other things because you're not just in fear of your own safety. All right. Oh, thank you, Terry. Thank you so much. Obrigada. Thank you so much to everybody for being here. We have another webinar coming up on the 20th of November. Then we're going to take a little break. Clyde and I are taking a vacation out of the country. We're headed to Rome for a week. We're going to have some fun and kind of refresh and recharge. And then we're going to have one very special webinar in December where we're going to be focusing on moving in the LGBTQ community, especially focused on moving with trans children and with people that are looking for that support. So that's going to be in December. We have another webinar November 20th, and please share with your friends. And if you need anything, schedule a call with us here at Portugal The Place, and we'd be happy to go into more detail with you. Thank you again. Thank you so much.